Rome. The year is 390 BC, and Gallic invaders have just ravaged the city, reducing it to ashes. Rome, little more than a cluster of villages at the time, lay completely devastated. Most settlements would have vanished into history. Yet over the following centuries, the Romans would transform this ruined settlement into the greatest metropolis the world had ever seen. Over 1 million inhabitants, marble sanctuaries reaching 10 stories into the sky, and aqueducts delivering fresh water throughout the city. I employed modern artificial intelligence technology to digitally recreate ancient Rome during its golden age. Everything grounded in historical documentation and archaeological discoveries. We are going to get up close and examine individual structures to truly understand what it felt like to walk those streets. 70 million souls, 3 continents, a single empire, all governed from this location. And at its core stood the Roman Forum, the command center of history's mightiest empire. The Forum contained dozens of sacred buildings and commemorative structures, but certain locations witnessed Rome's most defining moments. This is the Curia, the Senate chamber, where 600 senators convened to shape the laws governing the empire. This structure remains standing today as one of the Forum's most intact buildings. Here in the central plaza rises the Rostra, the orator's platform where Mark Antony delivered his legendary eulogy following Julius Caesar's murder. His precise words are lost to time, but ancient writers record that he displayed Caesar's blood-soaked garment and publicly read his testament, so disclosing that Caesar had bequeathed wealth and parkland to every citizen of Rome. The oration proved so moving that the assembled masses burned Caesar's remains right here in the Forum. On that very location, Romans erected the Temple of the Divine Julius, establishing him as the first Roman in history elevated to godhood. Yet perhaps the Forum's holiest site was this modest round sanctuary, the Temple of Vesta. Within its walls, a sacred fire blazed without interruption for more than a millennium, maintained by the Vestal Virgins. Romans held the conviction that should this flame ever die, the empire itself would crumble. These priestesses dedicated 30 years to their service and were bound to chastity. Breaking this sacred oath resulted in being entombed alive, though they enjoyed rights that no other Roman women held. They could possess property, grant pardons to condemned prisoners, and ranked among Rome's most influential figures until Christianity abolished the practice in 394 AD. The Senate House, the Eternal Flame, the Speaker's platform, and we have only begun exploring what existed here. This single square served as the pulsing center of Earth's most dominant empire, but the emperors themselves resided just above on the Palatine Hill. This is Palatine Hill. The emperors converted the entire elevation into their personal residential compound, the Domus Augusti, residence of Augustus, Rome's inaugural emperor. By later standards, it appeared rather humble, but this marked the birthplace of imperial tradition. Generations later, Emperor Domitian chose to build on a grander scale, far grander. He constructed the Domus Flavia, an enormous state palace where he hosted official feasts accommodating hundreds of attendees, welcomed foreign monarchs in audience halls with ceilings soaring 30 meters overhead, and showcased Roman prosperity and dominance to anyone distinguished enough to receive an invitation. Adjacent to it rose the Domus Augustana, his actual private dwelling. This was where the emperor and his household resided, featuring sleeping quarters, personal bathhouses, landscaped grounds, and interior courtyards hidden from visitors. Domitian essentially maintained twin palaces side by side, one for ceremonies, one for daily life. And then there was this remarkable addition, his personal stadium stretching 160 meters, complete with viewing areas for the imperial household and their inner circle. The emperor could observe chariot competitions, athletic events, and gladiatorial matches without ever stepping outside his grounds. The Circus Maximus, accommodating over 150,000 spectators, stood literally at the base of the hill. But evidently, that was insufficient. He required his own private arena. Now, while Domitian enjoyed races in his hilltop retreat, the genuine excitement unfolded below. The Circus Maximus, antiquity's largest sporting venue. More than 150,000 Romans would crowd inside to witness chariot racing, the empire's most perilous and addictive spectacle. Competitors raced at velocities reaching 75 kilometers per hour, colliding in crashes so catastrophic they earned the name shipwrecks. Drivers wrapped the reins around their bodies, meaning a crash could drag them to their death. But survivors accumulated staggering fortunes. One celebrated charioteer earned enough during his career to feed Rome's entire population for a full year. The spectators matched this intensity. Romans aligned themselves with 4 competing teams: blues, greens, reds, and whites. Their devotion ran so deep that violence would erupt in the stands, occasionally claiming thousands of lives. This transcended mere amusement. It was collective obsession. Yet Rome's most renowned surviving arena was the Colosseum, considerably smaller, holding just 50,000. But it has endured nearly 2 millennia, and the brutality within its walls was far more extreme. Because here, carnage was intentional, not incidental. Across 3 centuries, an estimated 400,000 humans perished in this arena. Gladiators, convicted criminals, captives, and enslaved people. Hundreds of thousands of animals met their end. Lions transported from Africa, bears captured in Germania, elephants brought from Egypt, hunted toward extinction purely for Roman amusement. A standard day commenced with dawn executions, continued with animal hunts at noon, then featured gladiatorial combat through the afternoon. But what enabled this entire spectacle lay concealed beneath the arena surface. A 2-level underground maze, where enslaved workers controlled 28 lifting mechanisms to propel beasts and combatants upward through concealed openings. From the audience's perspective, a lion would materialize as if by sorcery. Spectators never glimpsed the machinery, only the performance. During the 100-day inaugural festivities alone, 5,000 creatures were slain. This continued across the centuries. Such was Roman entertainment, bloodshed, velocity, and pageantry unprecedented in human history. And when they were not observing death, Romans maintained deep religious devotion, constructing magnificent temples across the urban landscape. Most sanctuaries honored a single deity, but the Pantheon stood apart. In this instance, certain reconstruction details represent informed speculation. The bronze hardware and ornamental features were removed ages ago. This temple was designed to venerate every god simultaneously, which is precisely what Pantheon signifies: all deities. It represented Emperor Hadrian's approach to ensuring divine favor from every direction. The Pantheon remains ancient Rome's most intact structure, and deservedly so. It represents an engineering triumph. The concrete ceiling extends 43 meters across without any internal support columns, featuring only a single aperture at the summit called the oculus. Today, visitors can enter and stand beneath the identical dome that Romans experienced 1,900 years in the past. This architectural concept has shaped building design for 2 millennia, from Brunelleschi's Florentine Dome to the United States Capitol. Its conversion to a church in 609 AD explains why it escaped the destruction or material salvaging that claimed most Roman temples. The Pantheon impressed, but it was not Rome's most sacred edifice. That distinction belonged to the Temple of Jupiter, sovereign of the gods, positioned atop Palatine Hill. one of Rome's legendary 7 hills, towering directly over the Forum. Erected in 509 BC, the Temple of Jupiter ranked among Rome's most ancient and immense sanctuaries, consecrated to Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, the 3 supreme deities. This was where triumphal marches concluded. After subduing new lands, commanders would ascend Palatine Hill, accompanied by prisoners, plunder, and their conquering forces to offer sacrifices to Jupiter. For more than 8 centuries, this temple formed the spiritual nucleus of the empire, visible from every corner of the city. But unlike the Pantheon, it did not endure. Conflagrations destroyed it repeatedly, and today virtually nothing survives. Temples and divinities provided Rome with spiritual authority, but the empire truly rested on military supremacy. And violating centuries of Roman custom prohibiting soldiers within city boundaries, emperors garrisoned the Praetorian Guard at the Castra Praetoria, transforming their protectors into their most serious danger. The Praetorian Guard constituted Rome's most elite military force, approximately 10,000 soldiers at maximum strength who functioned as the emperor's personal defenders, compensated at triple the rate of standard troops. Unlike other Roman legions posted along imperial frontiers, the Praetorians resided here in Rome at the Castra Praetoria, an enormous military installation constructed just beyond the city in 23 AD. This arrangement was exceptional. Roman legal tradition prohibited armed forces inside city limits, yet emperors demanded protection, and the Praetorian Guard delivered it. Well, periodically, they also murdered at least 13 emperors, toppled ruling families, and on one occasion auctioned the imperial throne to whoever bid highest. The Castra Praetoria featured massive reinforced barriers, designed not to repel external adversaries, but to contain Rome's most politically volatile element. But how would you recognize a Praetorian among ordinary citizens? The Praetorian depicted here wears formal armor for palace security assignments, that crimson horsehair plume extending laterally across the helmet rather than lengthwise like ordinary soldiers instantly marked him as elite guard. The silvered scale mail and shoulder protection demonstrated exceptional craftsmanship, and the red elliptical shield bearing scorpion, stellar, and lunar imagery represented the Praetorian emblem. Meanwhile, the ceremonial lance and decorated bronze waistband, with its elaborate sword housing, all identified him as imperial security. But in practice, their appearance shifted considerably. During military expeditions, they wore standard legion equipment. While patrolling Rome, they often dressed as civilians. At official ceremonies, they donned this elaborate version. Situation determined everything. But while emperors concerned themselves with their guards, common Romans relied on something far more essential: the aqueducts. Like the imposing Aqua Claudia, one of Rome's 11 principal aqueducts, it extended 69 kilometers from Highland Springs in the Anio Valley directly to Rome. And this reveals its appearance as it reached the city. Colossal stone archways climbing 27 meters high, roughly equivalent to a 9-story structure, transporting water along the top through a stone conduit. Romans passing beneath these arches daily could gaze upward at one of antiquity's supreme engineering accomplishments, effortlessly conveying fresh water directly overhead. Engineering brilliance in its purest form. The Aqua Claudia alone supplied sufficient fresh water for hundreds of thousands of Roman residents every single day, all functioning through nothing more than gravitational force and meticulous engineering. Remarkable. And astonishingly, portions of it persist today, nearly 2,000 years afterward. But Rome represented more than its monuments. It was a dynamic, pulsating metropolis exceeding 1 million residents. So where did they actually dwell? Envision this scenario. You are an ordinary Roman, perhaps a merchant or tradesperson. You awaken in an insula, a multi-level residential structure filled with households similar to yours. Roughly 90% of Romans occupied these buildings. They rose 5 or 6 stories high, cheaply assembled from timber and brick, and families occupied single chambers in cramped, clamorous circumstances. The higher your floor, the lower your rent, but also no plumbing, no cooking facilities, and if flames erupted, you faced descending narrow stairways through a burning structure. Structural failures occurred with such frequency that emperors ultimately enacted regulations restricting building heights. Each morning you would exit your confined dwelling and proceed somewhere like Trajan's market to commence your day. Constructed into a hillside, this vast complex contained over 150 commercial spaces and administrative offices, distributed across multiple tiers. Traverse the ground level, and you would encounter small establishments, tabernae vending everything imaginable. Exotic spices from eastern lands, fresh seafood from coastal waters, wines, olive oils, textiles, ceramics. Climb higher, and you would discover expansive storage facilities and bureaucratic offices where the empire's actual commerce transpired. Romans labored here, conducted trade here, negotiated here. An imperial economy operating continuously within one enormous structure. Following an exhausting day, every Roman sought one destination: the public bathhouses. The baths of Trajan sprawled across more than 11 hectares and could accommodate thousands simultaneously. Roman bathing meant dedicating hours there. You would train in the exercise hall, swim in the basins, perspire in the heated chambers, then invigorate yourself with a frigid immersion. Throughout, you would encounter companions, exchange political rumors, arrange commercial transactions, possibly even consume a meal. Admission cost nearly nothing, merely a modest coin. Consequently, everyone attended: enslaved people, traders, even senators. All those aqueducts we examined earlier, the water might conclude its journey here, warming these massive facilities, filling the pools, providing ordinary Romans with living standards that Europe would not replicate for over 1,000 years. 1 million people, one city. Rome pioneered this achievement, and to accomplish it successfully, they had to create the modern urban environment. They constructed insulae, 5- and 6-story residential buildings housing 90% of inhabitants, humanity's original high-rises. They built the Aqua Claudia, 69 kilometers of stone archways conveying fresh water from mountain sources, 190,000 cubic meters daily. They constructed Trajan's market, 150 commercial spaces arranged across multiple levels, ancient Rome's shopping center. They built the Colosseum and Circus Maximus, venues capable of holding over 200,000 spectators combined. They constructed the Baths of Trajan, 11 hectares, where everyone from enslaved workers to senators gathered to bathe. And they engineered everything to endure. The Pantheon's concrete ceiling, still intact after 1,900 years, remains history's largest unreinforced concrete dome ever constructed. Rome did not merely build a city. They solved a problem no one else could solve. How do you enable 1 million people to function within a single city? Advanced 2,000 years. New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai. Residential towers, identical principle to insulae. Athletic arenas, Colosseum architecture merely expanded. In communal areas, Roman forums and bathhouses, simply updated. Concrete, still founded on their chemical formula. We have refined the technology, but the groundwork remains Roman. Rome solved it originally. We have simply continued constructing upon their foundation ever since. Thank you for joining me on Arthur Vale Reborn History. Which ancient civilization should I reconstruct next? Leave your suggestions in the comments below.